Right. Okay, brother, your question.
Ashanti, brother Coakley, for once again kicking game. Mr. Elders,
My name is Elder, no S.
whatever. The Olmec civilization civilized America.
Hold on.
Kick game.
Let's try not to be vicious.
I'm not. This is the way I speak.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. What is it about me, or what is it about you that hate? Why do you hate yourself? I mean, all these statistics that you quote, those are European institutions. And all these Negroes you talk about, Diana Ross and Sidney Poitier, they sleeping with the enemy. So, I mean, and then you bring Irv Rubin. This is the individual that spied on every single African organization in the United States, sold those documents to South Africa. So how do you have audacity to sit up here and support white America? You should be happy that you're walking out here live. Because there are brothers that are tired of people selling out. And you better watch your back.
Do you respond?
I have a question for you, sir. Sir,
Brothers and sisters.
sir, I have a question for you. If you are so unhappy with what I've said, perhaps you should ask for your $15 back, because you misinvested your money.
Giving praise to God. I'd like to greet my brothers and sisters in the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, sister. You're beautiful also. This is a unique opportunity for us tonight because we have an opportunity to discuss our views with two powerful brothers. And just because you disagree with a brother doesn't necessarily mean he's not a brother. He may not be your brother, but he's still a brother. The uniqueness of this event tonight is because the black community very seldom has an opportunity to discuss its views in public, uncensored. And we have a very unique opportunity inasmuch as we don't have press clubs and we don't have businessmen's forums that sponsor the kind of speakers that are going to be here today. The two views that you will hear this evening are views that represent a significant constituency in America. One constituency is considered a conservative constituency that basically is in the process of a social reconstruction. The other perspective is an awareness constituency that is looking to prevent black genocide. So we bring the two together tonight to discuss the point. Is Hollywood and the media racist towards blacks? We're going to get right into it. I'm going to introduce the first debatant. It's a brother I'm sure that you all are looking forward to meet, since he goes by the title Sage of South Central. Brother Larry Elder was born and raised in South Central Los Angeles. He attended Brown University and received a BA in political science, then attended the University of Michigan School of Law, where he graduated with a JD in 1977. Brother has a whole page here. I'm not going to read it all. We'll talk about his recent history. Currently, he has a talk show on KBC since March of 1994, The Larry Elder Show. He has tackled significant subjects and has been profiled in 60 Minutes, Geraldo, it's appeared on Oprah, McNeil Lear, Rolanda, Larry King, Hard Copy, CNN News, C-SPAN, The Today Show, Politically Incorrect, Charles Grodin, This Week with David Brentley, and The Late Late Show with Tom Snyder. He is currently in the process of launching a nationally syndicated radio show as well as a nationally syndicated column. And he's in the process of also establishing the Larry Elder Foundation, a nonprofit organization that will contribute to groups and individuals offering non-government self-help solutions to problems of poverty, crime, poor parenting, dependency, and education. Brothers and sisters, I introduce to you our first debatant, Larry Elder. Brother Larry, we'd like to welcome you to South Central. Okay. At this time, we'd like to introduce our second debatant. Brother Stephen Coakley is a nationally renowned artist, activist, researcher, lecturer with an unrelenting focus on the enemies of the global African community. Brother Coakley, is a former special assistant to the mayor of Chicago and has served on the board of numerous organizations, including the Chicago NACP. He's been a featured lecturer at the University of Minnesota, University of Kansas, UCLA, University of Illinois, Howard University, Hampton University, Morgan State, American, Georgetown, and Notre Dame University, to name a few. Brother Coakley has appeared on CNN Crossfire, Sunday Morning with Charles Cornell, McNair Leo Report, Morton Downey Show, amongst others. He has researched and lectured a wide spectrum of topics such as secret societies, the New World Orders, political assassination, the centralization of world power, and crisis on black leadership. We'd like to introduce you, live and uncensored, Brother Steve Coakley. And to show that I'm an unbiased moderator, I'd also like to welcome Brother Steve Coakley to South Central. Okay, brothers and sisters, we have two extremes of free speech today. So we are going to engage in a very structured format so that we don't get carried away and be here all night. Larry might have some place to go, right? All right, we'll have 3 rounds. The first round will be called the opening round, which will be a 30-minute presentation by each debatant. And then we'll have a 15-minute rebuttal round. And then we'll have a Q&A. And each of the debatants will be given a signal by myself at 5 minutes and at 1 minute. And then when time is up, a drum will sound. We had a very diplomatic discussion backstage in terms of who would go first, and Brother Larry volunteered to go first. So at this time, without further ado, I will introduce to you our first debatant, Brother Larry Elder.
Starting already. Brother Anthony, Mr. Coakley, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for inviting me. Appreciate it. You know, David Duke, Jesse Jackson, and Prime Minister Netanyahu were walking down a beach, and they saw a magic lantern. Picked it up, rubbed it, genie came out. Said, gentlemen, one wish, whatever you want. You first, sir. Reverend Jackson said, I want every African-American male, every African-American female, every African-American child to leave America and return to their ancestral homeland, the great continent of Africa. Prime Minister Netanyahu said, I want every Jewish male, every Jewish female, every Jewish child to leave America and return to their ancestral homeland, the great state of Israel. David Duke said, hey, I have a small Coke. The point is that we seem to be searching for that wonderful time, that wonderful day when the clouds open up and the heavens shine and there is no more racism in America. Well, I got news for you. Mark Furman will never dance on Soul Train, and racism will never be completely eradicated in this country or any other country. When you have a country where 10% of the people believe Elvis is still alive, and 7% believe if you send him a letter, he will get it, we got some problems. And we'll always have these kinds of problems. I was talking to a buddy of mine named Carlos. Carlos happens to be Hispanic. Carlos very desperately wants to get into the motion picture business, and he's been pitching a sitcom to a bunch of Hollywood executives, and he hasn't been getting anywhere. So he's talking to me about how much racism there was in Hollywood, how Hispanics were discriminated against. And I told him much of what I'm going to tell you in a few moments. But I said, Carlos, forget about our argument for a moment. Let's talk about the big picture. Can you name me, Carlos, the Japanese-American actor who has been nominated for an Oscar, let alone has won one? He said no. How about a Japanese-American actress? He said no. I said, how about a Chinese-American actor? He said no. How about a Chinese-American actress? He said no. I said, when you look at the groups in this country who are the highest income earning groups in this country, aside from Jews, if you want to categorize them in one category, Japanese Americans and Chinese Americans make more money than anybody else. More money than Americans of English extraction, more money than Americans of Polish extraction, more money than Americans of Italian extraction, of German extraction. So I said, Carlos, the relationship between an image on the screen and success in life is what? Zero. It doesn't mean anything. Now, we can have this debate, I said, Carlos. You obviously want to get into Hollywood, and I understand why you're frustrated. I can talk to you about your frustrations. But if you're telling me that our argument means anything at all in the streets, in day-to-day lives of people, you are flat out dead wrong. What matters is, are you prepared? Did you get an education? Are the quality of your schools excellent? Are you engaging in crime? Are you engaging in drugs? Are the men standing up to their moral and financial responsibility and assuming responsibility for children that they bring into the world? That's what matters. So much of life depends on our attitudes, on whether or not we limit ourselves, on whether or not we perceive ourselves to be victims or victors. I was working out once when I was living in Cleveland, and black man, Locker and I were next to each other. We were getting dressed, ready to go home. We started talking. I'd seen him around, but we never really exchanged anything. And I said, what do you do for a living? He said, I am a computer consultant, and I consult black mayors in Ohio. When they're trying to upgrade their computer systems, they call me, I come in, and I recommend it. He said, what do you do? I said, I place lawyers with law firms and corporations. A corporation or a law firm wants a lawyer with experience. They contact me. I try and find somebody, match them together. He said, oh, I didn't realize that there was an organization that placed minority lawyers. I said, I never said I placed minority lawyers. 98% of the lawyers I place are not minorities, and 100% of my clients are headed up by a CEO or a managing director who is not minority. And he began complaining about his business. He told me that he doesn't make very much money because the government doesn't pay fast, the government doesn't pay competitive free market dollars, and every time the mayor loses an election, he has to start a relationship with a new guy. I said, why are you limiting your business to black mayors? He said, well, I said, why aren't you a computer consultant to anybody who needs your services? When I started my business, I got lots of calls, and I got lots of calls from people to sell me insurance. Probably 20, 30 people came by, just dropped by. Finally, this black guy came by, looked good, sounded good, spoke English. If you ever dealt with a life insurance person, you know what I'm talking about. So we went to lunch. He outlined what he thought I needed. I needed key man insurance. He explained that to me. I needed fire safety. He explained that to me. And I said, I assume you're doing quite well. He said, well, actually, I'm struggling. I said, why? I can't believe it. You're the best life insurance guy who's ever come by. He said, well, you know, black people don't have that much money. I said, your clientele is all black? He said, all but 2 of my customers are black. And he worked for a major insurance company. I won't give you the name. And I said, tell me, did they tell you to target the black market? He said, no. I said, did they imply it? He said, no. I said, did they subtly suggest it? He said, no. I said, you've just now said black people don't have that much money. Why would you target black people when they don't have that much money? 30 other insurance salesmen have come by me to sell me stuff, all of whom were white. They took a look at me, and they did not turn around. Why are you doing that? He had no real answer. The reason the young lady just yelled out, is Hollywood and the media racist? The reason I'm starting out this way, and I hope you'll be patient with me, is because this is a larger issue than that. The issue is about, is this country racist? The issue is about whether or not people who are prepared, who have talent, who are willing to work hard can make it in America. That's really what this is about. We could apply this debate to Hollywood. We could apply it to the oil industry. We could apply it to the real estate industry. But unless we have an understanding and an acceptance, and hopefully a sense of hope and optimism, nothing matters. We are constantly worried about what others think of us, to the exclusion of what we think about ourselves. And unless a people has dignity and self-respect and pride, all bets are off. The greatest collegiate football player in America today is somebody named Randy Moss. Many people in this room have probably never heard of him. And the reason you never heard of him is because despite the fact that he was an outstanding high school athlete, broke all kinds of records as a wide receiver, when he was 18 years old and a senior in high school, someone in his class called him a nigger. Randy Moss had been recruited by Notre Dame, by Florida State, by UCLA, and after this kid in his class called him a nigger, Randy Moss beat the crap out of him. Because Randy Moss was 18 years old and therefore was an adult, he was prosecuted and tried and pled guilty to assault. Bye-bye Notre Dame, bye-bye Florida State, bye-bye UCLA. He ended up going to a college in West Virginia that isn't even a top-ranked college, where he is competing against substandard competition. He'll still make it to the NFL. But because he did not compete against top-notch quality competition, because he did not get the exposure on Channel 2, Channel 4, Channel 7, he will make substantially less money now than he would have had he not beaten the crap out of this guy who probably is working the deep fry at McDonald's as we speak. So what was accomplished here? What was accomplished? What was proven? There is, when I was living in Cleveland, there was a man who wanted to buy the basketball team, the Cleveland Cavaliers. He publicly announced before he purchased the team that when he bought the team, because the team was not doing well financially, he was going to hire more white basketball players. Publicly said this, and proceeded to do just that. And within a few months, the team was an academic, was a athletic disaster. It was a commercial disaster. Lo and behold, he found out that nobody wanted to come to watch a losing team, whether the players were white, black, purple, or green. Marge Schott is the owner of the Cincinnati Reds. Marge Schott is an avowed racist. She collects Nazi memorabilia, swastikas. They have her on tape referring to one of her employees as a nigger. Pick up the newspaper, though, the sports section sometime, and take a look at the roster of the Cincinnati Reds. And it will be chock full of black and Latin ball players. Why? Certainly not because she loves them. Certainly not because she cares. But because she has no choice. They're excellent. They're outstanding. And if she's going to win and put booties in the seats, she has to have people who can play. The moral to the story, of course, is that if we empower ourselves, if we are excellent at what we do, if we don't take no for an answer, if we persevere, if we have self-respect, if we have pride, there is no power on earth that can stop us. None. I came here about a year ago, not too long ago, for a panel discussion on how to get into Hollywood. And it was at Leimert Park. Marla Gibbs put it on. I just came as a member of the audience because I wanted to hear. And there were about 15 people, various positions in Hollywood. 3 or 4 of the panelists were black. Arthur Hiller, who's the head of the Motion Picture Academy, was present, who's also a director. And every single person responded to the question whether blacks were shut out of Hollywood because of racism. And every single person said no. Is Hollywood stupid? Yes. Is Hollywood narrow? Absolutely. Are there some dumb executives who don't get it, who don't understand that a waiting to exhale can make money? Absolutely. Is there nepotism where people hire family members and friends? Unquestionably. Is it difficult to make it in Hollywood if you are an actor, an actress, a director, a producer? Absolutely. It has always been that way. It always will be that way. But cronyism and favoritism and friendshipism is a far different thing from racism. Hollywood is about one thing and one thing only, and it is about money. And if you can put some executive crystal ball in front of him and say, hey, look, this project is called Soul Food. And look in the crystal ball and you'll see 6 months from now, it's going to make you $20 million. He'll greenlight that project yesterday. We all see things, however, through our own prisms, our own experiences. We all have our own ideology. We have our own attitude. Everybody's like that. But let me tell you something. Hollywood consists of roughly 7 major studios and distributors. That's all. Sony, the Bronfman, Universal, Disney, Viacom, and a couple of others. That's it. But that's not unusual. Most businesses are heavily concentrated. The soft drink business has basically 2 players, Coke and Pepsi, 80% of the market. The airline industry has about 6 players, 90% of the market. It's not unusual. Are there very many senior black executives in Hollywood? No, there are not. You can count them on one hand. A lot of them, however, are in entry-level ranks. The most popular and most prosperous and most successful TV director right now is a black man. Disney just had the head of their television division, a black man. They're coming. But let me ask you something. Let's suppose if I could magically transform Michael Eisner into Michael Mustafa. will the pressures be any different? This is a publicly held corporation, and your job as CEO is to maximize return of equity for your shareholders. That will be the goal and the pressure no matter who is the CEO of Disney. That person must greenlight projects that will make money. And if the American people want big, broad comedies, if the American people want chase scenes, if the American people want thrillers, then that CEO will give it to the American people. Otherwise, that CEO will lose his or her job. Is the media racist? It's difficult to get a film made. Forrest Gump was one of the most popular films ever. Grossed over $600 million. The woman who produced it is married to a Hollywood executive. It took her almost 10 years to get the film off the ground because nobody thought it would make money. Star Wars, the most successful trilogy ever, was turned down by every major studio because nobody thought it would make money. Someone once described Hollywood as a place where executives stand around in a place where lightning once struck, hoping it will strike again. That's narrowness. That's stupidity. That's rigidity. That's playing it safe. But it ain't racism. I'll tell you about Hollywood, and I know a number of people here. I've talked to probably hundreds of people in Hollywood. Let me tell you what the deal is. If you're a Hollywood executive and someone comes to you with a project and you greenlight it and it fails, you're in trouble. You can lose your job. That's why you get Star Wars, Star Wars 2, Star Wars 3, The Son of Star Wars, Star Wars Takes a Bride. However, if you say no, you still get your stock options. You still get your parking space. So the pressure is to do what's worked in the past. The pressure is to do what's safe. The pressure is to do what has made money in the past. The pressure is to hope that lightning strikes twice in the same spot. But that is not racism. It's about attitude. Nowadays, with technology the way it is, you can make a film. You get $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 together, you can make a movie. Technology is such now, it's cheaper than ever. You don't have to have training, you don't have to have background. Spike Lee wrote a movie about his first film, She's Gotta Have It, called The Making of She's Gotta Have It. I recommend that you buy it. Step by step by step, he tells you how to do it. You don't have to go to film school, you don't have to know anything about a camera, don't even have to have any money. But you have to persevere. Robert Townsend made Hollywood Shuffle on a credit card. El Mariachi, $30,000. It can be done if you are willing to work hard, if you're willing to suffer rejection, if you persevere, if you have vision, if you have love for what you are trying to pull off, it can be done. And don't let anybody tell you it can't. I'm not here to defend Hollywood. I am most certainly not here to defend the media. I've got my own issues with them. But I will tell you that whatever problems we have, whether we don't like the fact that too much TV news has crime, whether we don't like the fact that not enough emphasis is placed on education, these are matters that have very little to do with racism and everything to do with news directors attempting to put on the screen what they think consumers want. And rightly or wrongly, consumers want what they see on television news. All my life, I've had this almost criminal optimism. I didn't care what happened. The glass was always going to be half full. Quincy Jones. You can't just sit there and wait for people to give you that golden dream. You've got to get out there and make it happen for yourself. Diana Ross. Anger is an emotion that if you carry around for a long period of time, it doesn't allow you to live. John Singleton, director of Boys in the Hood. When you expect good, it's available constantly, and it makes itself a reality in your life. Alfre Woodard. I don't think Hollywood is racist. I think Hollywood lives and dies on greed. Jobs are not given because of race. They're predicated completely on money. Morgan Freeman. Was that Morgan?
Oh, Miss Daisy.
Let's talk about the media, and let's talk about Hollywood specifically. Newspapers. Obviously an important part of the media. Are newspapers racist? Are newspapers biased? Recent survey by the Gannett Foundation Freedom Forum, a liberal organization, 1992, reporters, 89% of them voted for Bill Clinton. 7% voted for George Bush. 1972, probably the most liberal person ever to run for presidency, George McGovern. 81% of reporters and senior editors voted for George McGovern. Again, probably the most liberal person ever to run for the presidency. 1996, 62% of journalists described themselves as liberal Democrats. A liberal Democrat, as you know, is far more likely to support outreach, far more likely to support race and gender-based preferences, affirmative action. Same thing with editorial writers. 45% describe themselves as liberal and democratic, as against only 23% who describe themselves as leaning the other way. Reporters are, by and large, quite liberal, quite sympathetic to minorities. Indeed, the numbers are now over 10 to 15% of all reporters are persons of color. LA Times in particular, the editor of that paper received an award for diversity because about 20% or more of his staff, people of color. 1994, nearly 40% of all interns in newspapers, people of color. And nearly all major newspapers have recruitment staffs and in-house diversity staffs specifically designed to recruit and hire qualified minority journalists. New York Times, Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, LA Times, all major newspapers are doing this. Hollywood. A UCLA U.S. News and World Report survey of the top entertainment figures in Hollywood show them to be substantially more likely to be liberal Democrats than the rest of the country. 91% of them are pro-choice on abortion. The charge is made, of course, that Hollywood is controlled by Jews. Let's talk about that. I mentioned the 7 or so major corporations that handle most of the business and distribution in Hollywood. Time Warner, Disney, the Bronfman Company, Rupert Murdoch, Sony, Sumner Redstone of Viacom. There's a book called How the Jews Discovered Hollywood, and there is no question that many of the executives in Hollywood are Jewish. Now then, is that a bad thing? There is a magazine I'm sure you're familiar with called Emerge. Emerge is a magazine that had the picture of Clarence Thomas on the cover, holding a lantern that said, Clarence, Uncle Thomas, lawn jockey to the far right. Well, that magazine had an article about Jewish influence in America. They discovered something very interesting. Jews were the least racist group in America, including blacks. The following questions were asked in this Emerge magazine article, and some of you may actually be interested in reading it. It's in September 1994. I urge you to take a look at it. The following statements were asked of the general population and were asked of Jews.
5 minutes, Larry.
Okay. Blacks complain too much about racism. 62% of the American people said yes. 47% of Jews said yes. Blacks stick to themselves. 58% of the general public said yes. 42% of Jews said yes. Blacks prefer welfare. 35% of the American public said yes. 19% of Jews agreed with that. Blacks are less ambitious. 29% of the general public said yes. 19% of Jews said yes to that. Blacks are too loud and pushy. 27% of the American public said yes to that. 13% of Jews said yes. Blacks are not hardworking. 20% of the American people said yes. Only 14% of Jews agreed with that. Blacks are not as honest. 15% of the American people said yes. Only 9% of Jews said yes. Blacks have less native intelligence. You know, people have paid $15 to hear Mr. Coakley and myself debate, and I would appreciate it if you allow me to finish. Because I know you intend to give Mr. Coakley some respect, and I hope you'll do likewise with me. You know, just as a thought, I don't expect to change very many people's minds here. I really don't. But I know there's some young people here. I see some young people out here. And I'm really talking to you. Because some of the older people are angry and are unwilling to listen to information. I've given you a lot of information. Whether you like it or not, you can get on the internet and look it up for yourself. The Time magazine recently did a study, and they asked black adults whether racism was a major problem in America, and the overwhelming number said yes. They also asked the same question of black teens. And the majority of black teens also said yes. However, they asked a follow-up question to the black teens. And they said, though, in your own personal lives, is racism a major factor, a small factor, or no factor? And nearly 90% of the black teens said racism was little or no factor in their own lives. So I'm talking to you. Guild, the Screen Actors Guild, The Screen Actors Guild, 1996, reported that 12% of all film and TV jobs went to blacks. That is the same percentage of population in blacks. Screen Directors Guild, 1995, 3.9% of all the jobs went to black directors. 1996, 5.2%, which is a substantial rise in just 1 year. Commercials. Screen Actors Guild reports that Hispanics, Asians, Native Americans, and blacks get 21% of all the commercial jobs. Blacks get, of all commercial jobs, approximately 12%. And a study by Minorities Markets Alert, a New York City newsletter that tracks the extent to which minorities get commercials, reported in 1995 that black faces appeared in nearly 40% of the commercials in New York, and the trend is similar
1 minute.
nationwide. Black hiring is up at the actor level. Black hiring is up at the director level. Black hiring is up at the producer level. I just went down to my mailbox before this debate. This is the cover of Ebony magazine. Oprah, Debbie, Whitney, Tracy sparkle in the year of black women producers. Read the article and you'll find out that black women producers are coming and coming strong. Hollywood is not racist. Hollywood is rough, it is tough, and if you are unprepared to struggle, if you are unprepared to get rejection, then you should perhaps consider selling shoes. It is a tough, tough business, but if you've got vision and you're willing to work hard and you're willing to persevere, You can make it, and people are doing it every single day. Thank you very much.
Time. Okay. That was an interesting perspective. One thing let's both agree with is that America is great in as much as it lets you say what you want to say. And everybody have a right to agree or disagree. And it don't necessarily mean it's true. All right. At this point, Brother Coakley been shuffling papers for about a half hour. So we ought to be about ready. I'm going to give him time to get to his spot. That way, this is going to be your spot. Okay, brothers and sisters. I introduce to you Brother Steve Coakley. All right.
He's a victim. I appreciate Brother Malik for hosting his second great debate. I believe. That's right, get John. I believe in the concept of debating ideas and concepts before people who have not yet made up their mind. And I watched that debate between Brother Collard and Anthony Hilder. It was some. And others will watch the debate today. I, like you, are awfully surprised that Brother was even coming tonight. I think for many hours we spent time. Yeah, that's true. That's true. We spent many hours discussing whether he would actually show up or not. But that's good. You and I got to debate too on Crossfire, didn't we? And I whipped your ass, didn't I? Yes, I did. So I'm sorry. But that's all right. That's all right. But you know what? Even more than that, I'm sorry to have used him to get you jacked up. I'm sorry to have used him to get you jacked up because you know he would be good for some excitement and some laughing because he's that type of guy. No, that's true. That's true. But I also want you to remember that he was in Riverside the day Khalid Muhammad got shot at, too. Listen, hey, it's coming. Listen up. And also, his name was right over Julius Butler in the book that revealed he was an informant, too. You know that? But anyway, all right. Is Hollywood racist? Let's ask Tarzan movies. Let's ask cowboys and Indians movies. Huh? Was that fair stuff? Did those things seem to represent the values of a certain group of people who were into colonizing land that didn't belong to them? Was there racism and then there was media? Or was there media and then there was racism? There was racism. The greatest PR man in the history of the world was Benjamin Franklin, who took a group of cutthroat whites and scrubbed them up and cleaned them up and made it look like they ran a democracy. But while they were doing those movies on the Apache Nation and Geronimo and the Seminoles and these other things, not a one of them could vote. There was no massive turnout of the Apache Nation in the 1812 election. What was the turnout of the African people in the 1842 election? What was even the turnout of white women in 1890, 1910, 1920? Rosa Parks didn't even come till 57. Well, shit, if Hollywood was so straight, how come the rest of white America was so off to the side? Now, originally, I thought we were going to do 45-minute segments, and obviously, Larry, you saw now, you probably had enough for 45 minutes. You could have done 45. It's nothing to be afraid of. And there's nothing wrong with being here all night. How you doing, Bob? And there's nothing wrong with all of that. But I had a couple of files that I brought that I wanted to share with you. I got a nice, thick Larry Elder file over there. I don't think I'm going to need that. I think I pulled everything you had off the internet. I pulled everything Horowitz had. I got a Horowitz file over here because Horowitz is a very interesting guy and has a lot to do with why he's willing to be here, because the people who finance that type of thing are into penetration. Oh, stop. Tomorrow, Disney will reshow Pocahontas. But was Pocahontas a racist movie? You damn right it was. The little daughter of the original people fell in love with a foreigner while the other white men sang "Savages, Savages." My little African daughter came up to me and said, "Daddy, we will never have a Pocahontas in our neighborhood. She's only 5 years old." So I thank Disney for making it plain. But Disney is doing Pocahontas' damn self, because if you go to Harlem and see something called Harlem, USA, you will see that while Disney's playing Pocahontas in the public, they're being Pocahontas up in Harlem. I went to Harlem to fight against Time Warner and Disney from penetrating 125th Street for what they're calling Harlem Renaissance Part 2. Harlem Renaissance Part 1 was a diversion from the penetration and street power of Marcus Garvey. So it isn't just that a movie is a movie or an industry is about employment. Everyone that's in the media have values that they are first responsible for protecting, and then they can make a movie. White men who do not toe the line of white supremacy in the way they believe it is appropriate, like Borsky or Milliken, are punished and set down and spanked in the butt. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, these people didn't just jump off the planet, they got pushed out the planet. Colin Powell, who spent a lot of time going around the country saying how it wasn't no conspiracy, but when he was the #1 candidate for president, he backed down because his wife made him aware of the forces that will fuck you up in America if you ain't on the list. So why would a group of white men take the pyramid and all CNI and put on the top of the dollar bill? Because you see, they still bowing to the king and the queen today. And even when the little white woman dipped over on the black side, you saw racism. You know that's so. You know they whack. When that's not tonight's subject. But you understand the principle. Still today, check. All right, okay. Hold on. Now, you know DreamWorks got a new movie coming out called The Prince of Egypt. A white man. Who made the movie Stargate that dehumanized the builders of the pyramids. Yeah, they did that. All right. Gorillas in the Mist out of Africa. Cecil B. DeMille's the Mason of Hollywood, who did the Ten Commandments. Pharaoh, Yul Brynner. Moses, Charlton Heston. If Cecil B. DeMille didn't get the story wrong, you think that thing would be on every Easter? That's right. It did. It fit like Birth of a Nation. And the book is How the Jews Invented Hollywood. That's the name of the book, How They Invented Hollywood. Now, there's some things about the industry that I need you to understand, and I'm actually so glad that he helped bring all of you to me. In fact, oh, stop. Now, we ain't got time for applause. I ain't into that juice. I really got some. I got more than enough to use, and we don't have enough time to use it. But in the spirit of Hollywood are many divisions and industries that impact even whether there is a movie or not. The investment banking community, the Lazar Ferezes, the Shearson Lehman American Expresses. These investment banking companies, Goldman Sachs, Dillon Reed, decide before a movie leaves a piece of paper. All of them are white. Now, maybe there's some black spirit in them that decide they'll be fair and open. Investment banking companies have to deal with the investment bond raters, the Standard & Poor's and the Moody's. They rate the bonds that allow the companies to float the paper to make the movies. They're all white, too. The insurance companies. You know any big black insurance company backing up movies? Go ask Spike Lee and many of these others about the question of bonding and insurance, and every one of them will admit to you a struggle that is unique to them, not other whites. What about the accounting firms that can ruin you on a bad subtraction and an addition? How about the advertising agencies? I personally know. My mama worked at J. Walter Thompson Hill and Norton, one of the largest advertising companies in the world. And I had to go up in there with my brothers and free my mama from some real racist shit up in there. And we jacked that company down. They were headquartered in the Chicago division was in the John Hancock building. We pulled down them stats of employment. They even had a black personnel director who knew how to hire all white people. And when a conflict came, he knew how to do things the white way. But I personally know about J. Walter Thompson and their racism, and we won our way through them. I personally know about CBS Records and racism and Public Enemy. I was personally involved in the exorcism of Professor Griff from Public Enemy over the question of domination in the record business. But Public Enemy didn't stick with me, and eventually, as they went with the whites, they broke down. See, actually, I think Larry Elder has really faked out ABC and Disney and stuff today. I actually think he faked them out because actually I know he knows that there's racism even in his own company. Hold it now. Stop that. I believe at the ABC station in New York, where you ought to be at. You be syndicated, you ought to be there. Disney's coming there. But they didn't put you on, did they? Stop! I believe they put your two competitors on, didn't they? See, because what he's telling you is that, you know those two white guys right here that on the radio, goofy white guys, what's their name? What's their name? What? John and Ken, right? Listen to me now. John and Ken are not even on KABC, are they? But in New York they are, in place of him. Stop now. How do you think he feels here defending Hollywood while behind his back, Hollywood does the white thing? Maybe he's so pissed off about that he decided to come here tonight. If you listen to his story, he kind of said two things. Hey, you know, this thing is really racist. And a little later on, he went, you know, it really ain't. You know, that reminded us of Jesse Jackson when we pressed him about being up in the Council on Foreign Relations. He said, I've never really been to a meeting, but I spoke at some of them. Name me the #1 black movie reviewer. In fact, I think Ebert married to a black woman. That's about as close as it gets. I think that's about as close as it gets. And did not the CIA drug story show the real hunky of the white press? Did not the CIA drug story bring out the fact that media cannot deal with truth, it must deal with social control? The LA Times, the Chandler family, the Cox family, the Sulzbergers of the New York Times, the Graham family of the Washington Post and Newsweek, each and every one of these honkies have fought me every day since I emerged, because they know if I don't know one thing in my time I get to share with you, that we spend each and every moment describing the bestiality of these corporate whites, even in the media and in the Federal Reserve and in the insurance and in education and in government and in law and in corporate and in industry. They know we are the uncompromising force at something that has basically been distracted from the masses of the people. Why don't the people know about the Council on Foreign Relations? Why don't, look here, listen now, the Council on Foreign Relations magazine, Foreign Affairs, recently did a story entitled Radio Intervention. It was a massive move. It said that if in Rwanda we had acted fast enough and cut off the radio when they called, killed the traitors, and they went out and killed them. That's how they got the country. In fact, that's how you'll get this country. Oh, stop now, because you got to remember, what was the formula that got Mandela out of jail? Wasn't that they dropped the charges. It was oncoming revolution. All right? And it's on. It's on. I ain't here to debate whether the Hollywood is in the racism. I'm here to tell you we tearing Hollywood ass up with the rest of white supremacy. That's our goal. It's not about are they that. Shit, we know that. But it's about the motion. What about the power of A.C. Nielsen? They're a corporation out of Chicago who rate the stories that always seem to come out with the black family stories as being lower rated, because even the people who got the boxes are white. What about buffoonery in the media? Did they ever finance buffoonery? Martin and all of you could call out every goofy show there was. You know, they have all. There's not a decent black man in media. Every black man looks shiftless, and even Cosby backs up behind his wives and all of his shows to show that even if he's a doctor or a lawyer, he cannot be a front-walking black man. Those images are responsible for sowing the seeds of inferiority in our children. The directors are white, the pitch people are white. Hey, do you know that in advertising, you need to know who the top advertisers are, like on TV, Burger King and McDonald's. And these dominant buyers of advertisers tend to have news about them dissipate. They can kind of buy a story. Now, I work for a mayor. I know I can crush many stories. I know about stories and story crushing and story creation. You can manipulate the media if you have the leverage with them. You have a government, you got the leverage. But they give commissions to, especially the white advertising companies, of 15% for buying the time and making the commercial. They kind of give the guy who needs the commercial production and the time on the media all in one package. Better than you could get if you walked up there by yourself. You pay double the money. It's kind of like a ritual, a united thing. They kind of got a little secret society going back there. They got book scouts, pitch people, trackers. All of them are primarily white. Oh, let's see here. All right. That Masonic dollar bill. Here I have a book here called The Masons. The Masons who helped shape their nation. It say our nation, but you know I couldn't say that. It's a book. And on this book is a picture of a white guy in a Masonic hat right here. And I wanted to see it. Hey, look. I'm into conversions. I got a black Rhodes Scholar. I stood him up in Florida. He repudiated Cecil Rhodes, and I said, give me some evidence of you coming across. He gave me the register of every Rhodes Scholar since 1903. He is a conversion. We in a conversion. Hey, listen. In the last days, you don't know who might be the trick under the cover. And I warn white people today that it won't be long before you spank him hard enough, and he'll be down here for free. trying to tell all the things they told him when they thought he was on that side. But also I want to remind him as a brother to go watch that movie Geronimo, where they empowered a man of his own ethnic group to go up in the mountains and get Geronimo. And when they brought Geronimo down and they were going to put him on the train to take him to Florida, they took and lined up all the people who helped them reduce the tribe to the train, and they stood them up and they thanked them all. Then they walked out in the audience and snatched the guns out of their hands and said, "Get your ass on the train with Geronimo." So listen up, listen up. Let's not wait until the day the train comes for him to recognize that when we're dealing in a skin game, everybody might not know that's Larry Elder and might throw you on there with the rest of us. But this is Jack Warner here in a Masonic hat, and Jack Warner was the Grand Master Mason of Hollywood. And he then, as Warner Brothers, ran out and became the first company to start putting people in blackface. Was blackface a positive reflection of African people? In fact, I think a guy up here, I got one book up here of a guy who did a piece on Disney, the historical context of Disney and Mickey Mouse and all the rest of them, called Disney's Plantation. He's a professor. It's a very powerful book, The Representation of Black Culture. And Disneyland, if you go to Disneyland, I swear to God, everything up there black is evil and sinister. Everything in Disneyland is evil and sinister that's black. For real, deep black. Is sinister. Every little game they play. In conclusion, Walt Disney, as much as anyone else in the entertainment industry, used distortion of black images to perpetrate his ambition. Mickey, the subliminal minister, Captain EO, and Uncle Remus, and the perpetual Sambos were used as puppets, placating the fears activated in his political unconsciousness. Disney recreated history to satisfy his disdain for blacks. But Roy Disney is on the page next to Jack Warner as one of the master masons of Hollywood. But those masons who founded this country were anti-black. That's why they could put the pyramid on the dollar bill and never been to Kemet. Because they were stealers, colonists, takers of things. So they didn't mind using a symbol that didn't belong to them and kept that symbol secret, the Great Seal. That side of the Great Seal was kept secret until the 1930s because they didn't want everyone to know that the base of this society was that of a secret society. The Luce family at Time, and I got a bunch of transparencies. I could throw it up there, but I don't want to run out of time. I'm really got more stuff than we could use. But the Luce family of Time magazine. He's Skull and Bones man. Loose man, Skull and Bones man. Rhodes Scholars all up in the history of the New York Times. Cecil Rhodes. It's Cecil Rhodes' secret society that's the dominant interest in the society today. The Trilateral Commission, the Bilderberger Group, the Council on Foreign Relations. These are remnants of a secret society. And you know what's deep? I showed my friends today, Larry, that some of the things you all advocate about, welfare rights and other things, and the elimination of welfare and limited government without social disruption, is the number 4 thing on the Trilateral Commission position paper on how to manage the world for the next 50 years. Is a position similar to his, but on the surface, this looked like right side with the right to speak. Horowitz was on the left and on the right, kind of like that LaRoche double agent on the left and on the right. When they raised $500,000 to save Larry Elder, if you saw anything they said about it, they said this is even deeper than Larry Elder. This is about white people and black people resisting colonial thinking. They made that clear that there was more at stake than a damn radio show. No, really, it's bigger than him. And everything history has ever showed us that when they finished with him. Now, you didn't have Greenspan come here. You didn't have the CIA director come here. You had Bush here, Clinton here, so-called Prince Charles here. What is it about you that commands such psychological operations attention? This is about psychological operations, about how people with no constituency have a disproportionate amount of time to express views that they hope neutralize deeper viewpoints. And all I say is that on some day, and it will happen, that they will spank him in a way that will make him want to be back with you. Hey, OJ, you can count them up. They'll be coming down. Listen up. Could you imagine him and OJ on the same team? It's possible. If we know white supremacy, it's possible. They be chained together like one of the movies, the Sidney Poitier and the other guy. They running, they in chains together. They chains and freedom for these two, freedom. In America, anything is possible. Dealing with poverty in the post-welfare state societies, it follows that the danger of a backlash against globalization, and that is the crucial domestic task for the industrialized democracies in dealing with the most deep-rooted potential source of that backlash, namely poverty. See, and the approach of feeding welfare is now discredited. It means that the public finances can no longer afford existing levels of entitlement. One of the toughest tasks of government all over the world is to cut welfare spending. Yet too often it's being done purely to save money rather than to adjust priorities and expectations. However much spending is cut, the problems to which the welfare state were a solution will remain: poverty, an underclass, insecurity in old age, gross inequality in health provisions. New solutions will have to be found. So if you're Rockefeller left or you're Rockefeller right, are you still Rockefeller? David Horowitz wrote a book on Rockefeller that was one of the sweetest books on Rockefeller ever written. And in that book, he had secret access to the archives of the Rockefeller family that is unprecedented in the history of the Rockefeller family. Unprecedented. And he goes from left to tricking on the Panthers to the right to tricking on us. And the reason I call him out, and also as well, who is the one black person on the board of Disney? You know? I believe it's Sidney Poitier, am I correct? You know? No, not at least. It's not cool. It's Sidney Poitier. I got the list up here. I ain't trying to be funny. No, really, it wasn't even a joke. It's not a joke, but it's important. Sidney Poitier is the only black on the board of Disney that's important. But there's the chairman emeritus of Philip Morris, the cigarette people, who for years lied about their killer cigarettes and had paid enough advertisement to get the media never to catch them until one little white man took and dropped through a transit, and the head of the Federal Trade Commission, a white man named Kessler, picked up the secret envelope and actually followed up all the information, and actually now has begun to get these cigarette companies to tell the truth that yes, we did manipulate tobacco, and put things in it that made you crave it, and yes, we lied about it, and yes, we targeted your children even though they were underage. And yes, we finance movies, and we finance books, and we do a lot of other things. Yes, these are our values. It's very important that it be on that level. Harold Washington, what about the media and black politicians? Harold Washington was constantly under attack by the white media. In Maryland, they just used the media, the Washington Post, to knock out Larry Young, the most powerful man in the Senate of Maryland. In Florida, they just knocked out the black Speaker of the House, using the media to set the climate to make it possible to go in there and wipe these people out. What about the media and the assassination of Martin King? Still today, they're looking for the killers, but it was the media that manipulated the dialogue. The man from the New York Times, Caldwell Black, said, hey, we heard a loud boom. We saw it from the bushes, but the New York Times wouldn't let it go down like that. The media versus the Black Panthers. The media versus the Nation of Islam. You tell me the media's been fair to Minister Farrakhan? I was there when the so-called gutter religion remark was made, and it is just that, so-called. Well, no, listen, don't you even fall for it. I'll accuse you of a conspiracy to take my time. Recently, Mobile Oil financed a 6-hour PBS special on Cecil Rhodes. The reason I bring up Cecil Rhodes again is because his secret society is dominating the day. On the board of the Council on Foreign Relations are many of the executives of the media company. But the Cecil Rhodes program, which was produced by Mobile Oil, didn't make him look like Adolf Hitler. Why is it that Cecil Rhodes, Irv, don't look like Adolf Hitler when in fact he did far more against people of color than Adolf Hitler was ever able to do? I'm making a point that if a white guy does something the right way, in fact, the PBS special, and I don't know how many of you all saw it, was really about how a homosexual colonized Africa. That's really what it was about. It was about promoting the concept that even a homosexual could take Africa, because Africans handed him a thing, give me all your land. Yeah, he signs it. He don't even know what it says. They bought New York for $24 in the beads, and the so-called Indios people had no need for $24. The concept that you could put trickery in front of the people to lessen their apprehensions against a program for world control. You see, in spite of all of this, the media is responsible for setting the climate that makes the program for world control possible, and that program is about white supremacy. He mentioned the Chicago Tribune earlier, which is one of the most racist papers in this country. Having been victimized by the Tribune, the interesting thing about its so-called fairness is to walk in the lobby of the Chicago Tribune, and in the middle of the lobby is a circle within a circle, which is the format of the secret society of Cecil Rhodes. But in the floor is a saying from John Ruskin.
5 minutes. 5 minutes.
John Ruskin, 5 and 5 is 10. John Ruskin, ain't 5 and 5 10? All right, check. Let me see. All right. Okay, listen up, listen up. And in that inscription from John Ruskin, who was the inspiration for Cecil Rhodes to colonize Africa, it says, never mind what techniques we use to take this here planet in the name of English-speaking people. Our children will not question our methods. They will only thank us for completing the task. When Columbus in 1992, they tried to play up the big Columbus thing, and in Chicago, they were going to have the World's Fair. Harold Washington and Coakley and a lot of other people stopped the 1992 World's Fair from coming to Chicago to celebrate Columbus, as they had done in 1892 in Chicago, the land that made the University of Chicago. In fact, even then, they had Colored People's Day, because only one day could colored people go to the World's Fair, the way they had set it up. But in the spirit of Christopher Columbus, we understand that the media is deeply responsible for relaying those things. And I heard him earlier mention Star Wars. There goes that imagery of black again, the dark, evil Darth Vader. It's the black man with a black voice even. Hey, no question. Up here, I have a lot of things about the breakdown of Disney. Murdoch, one of the most racist men in America. Rupert Murdoch controls the Fox. He's buying everything. Buying everything. Hey, how about in the media, if y'all saw that Motown special a couple weeks ago, you saw how Berry Gordy, and I heard him mention Diana Ross, and he surely was pissed at her. But Berry Gordy was forced to sell Motown for $65 million. But how much did the next white man buy it for after he turned it over? $365 million. Yes, sir. That's what you call, yeah, it's worth something, but if we don't want you to have it, we won't give it to you. If this America's about free speech, then Mr. Elder, you would have been the first one in line fighting for O.J. Simpson's right to buy a commercial. Hold it now, stop now. I'm not talking about whether he was guilty or not. I'm not talking about what his values are, because part of his problem started when he got over there with white women. No, listen now, listen. Oh! But when a man with money can't buy a commercial in America, even if his values don't agree with those who sell it, that is a paramount moment in racism and white supremacy, because money, or the fair capitalistic way in so-called America, should have allowed him to even buy it, to give his view. And when he was on CNN, I remember he couldn't even hold up the phone number. They blotted it out in front of him, and the Turner's supposed to be one of the fairest of them all. Something is very wrong there, and it isn't OJ because it's him today. Could be me or you tomorrow. It really could. No, really, it really could. Well, I'm going to sit down, and I see Disney stock up 18%. Company's doing good. Saw they had a little protest at the annual meeting in Kansas City. 35% of the stockholders voted against the company. 65-35 is awfully unusual equation for a stock protest. But Disney is being suggested that its corporate directors are all tied and loyal to Michael Eisner. Now, Michael Eisner had a heart attack. His buddy died in a plane crash. Other friends of his been run out of the company. These hunkies are fighting for the right to be the ones to kill the African people. They're
1
fighting
minute.
for the right.
1 minute.
They're fighting
And that's
for
not 2 minutes.
Okay, that's right. We didn't do 1 and 1, right? All right, we got 1 minute. United Nations reassessed its global role. Well, if the United Nations, the AMA, the Federal Reserve, and all those things were founded by a particular family, they were founded by a particular family. There's Uncle Cecil John Rhodes. His secret society is best reflected by the Council on Foreign Relations. Even in the Council on Foreign Relations, when you look to the primary donors, and you see Catherine Graham, who was on the Global 2000, Gerald Levin, and Time Warner, David Rockefeller, when you look and see the media people, hey, and what about that Mellon family? See, I always talk against those major families, but that boy, Covert Action Magazine, got a good story out about how, it's in Covert Action because it deals with the intelligence community, about how that center for
Time. And I wanted to hear that point, too.
No, you didn't, because you can't tell time.
I didn't want to be accused of in Lamert Park.
Why not?
All right, Brother Steve, have a seat. It's time for round 2. Seems like there's going to be a lot of rebutting going on.
Or what?
Y'all ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, the second round is 15 minutes. Rebuttal, Larry Elder.
All right.
Let me make an attempt to unravel some of that. Mr. Coakley, I am so impressed you're so concerned about my career. I'm a little confused, though. I thought I was a Trojan horse, somebody hired by the white man to advance the white man's interests, yet you're complaining that I'm not on WABC in New York. I'm a little confused.
Yep, okay.
I would have thought it would have been just the opposite. Since I'm carrying the spear for the defense of a bigoted system, I would have thought that I would have been in New York and by now. All right. Now, you've outlined a conspiracy. You've talked about how the system oppresses blacks. You've talked about how the movies depict blacks in negative images, how the movies have robbed black people of a sense of self-esteem. Tell me something, Mr. Coakley. Why do you live here in this country? Why not? I look at the large numbers of people. I look at the large numbers of people from third world countries coming here. I look at the Mariel boat lift from Cuba, all the people coming here. I don't see the parade of people going back. I don't see the parade of people going to Cuba. I don't see the parade of people going to Nigeria. I don't see the parade of people going to the Bahamas. There must be something about this country that's keeping 32 million black people here. You have outlined a conspiracy of Hollywood to oppress the ambitions of talented black people. I have a couple of questions. Johnny Cochran, during the O.J. Simpson case, likened Mark Fuhrman to Adolf Hitler. A number of Jews were upset about that. A number of Jews were upset about that. A lot of people felt that Johnny Cochran used the race card to free a man who had killed 2 people. Yet Johnny Cochran now has a now has a television show on Court TV, a national show with sponsors. Now, it seems to me if there were this conspiracy on the part of the media to oppress people who do not have views and values similar to their own, I am astounded that Mr. Cochran could even conceive of having a national television show, let alone having one. Jesse Jackson. Mr. Coakley has mentioned that Colin Powell was dissuaded from running for president by his wife, who feared the conspiracy. Interesting how Reverend Jackson was able to run both in 1984 and in 1988 despite the conspiracy. Jesse Jackson, you might recall, referred to Jews as Jaime and New York as Jaimetown. Yet Reverend Jackson now has a television show on CNN owned by Time Warner, a company that you've just criticized. Interesting how the conspiracy seems to have big holes in it. You have talked about me as a victim. I appreciate your concern for my welfare, Mr. Coakley. Tavis Smiley, who many of you know, once publicly called my show hate radio. And when someone called the show and said, I am one of those who has been writing letters to your sponsors to get your sponsors to stop advertising on your show, Mr. Smiley said, and I quote, and I love you for it, end of quote. Mr. Smiley has just now signed a 6-year deal with ABC Radio Network along with Tom Joyner to have their show syndicated nationally, despite the fact that he referred to my show, Tavis Smiley, as hate radio. There must be some glaring holes in the conspiracy, Mr. Coakley. You also have said that the movies have created a sense of inferiority in our people. I'm sorry that the evidence does not support your statement. The American Association of University Women just did a study, and many other studies have been done that show black boys have, in fact, more self-esteem, more pride, more self-respect than do white boys. Psychology Today had an article. Psychology Today had an article that said the same thing about black teenage girls. They were more proud, had more respect, had more sense of self-worth than did white teenage girls. So if there is this conspiracy, it is a woeful failure. You have talked about the buffoonish sitcoms on television, and you and I agree, Mr. Coakley. Many of the sitcoms on television are, in fact, buffoonish. And my recommendation to all the blacks who watch these shows, stop watching them. You stop watching them, you won't get them anymore. 25% of the ticket sales for movies in this country are purchased by black people. If you don't like what's on the screen, don't go. In 1996, 5 of the top 10 movies, the ones that grossed the greatest amount of money, either had a black lead star or a black co-star, including Will Smith, Independence Day, one of the most successful films ever made. If there is a conspiracy, there are some huge holes in it. And you mentioned Nelson Mandela, and I'm happy you did, Mr. Coakley, because Nelson Mandela, as many of you know, was in prison for 27 years. He was beaten. He was refused visit by his family. He was denied food. He was denied water. And when he got out, he became president of South Africa, a multi-ethnic nation, a nation which has no private sector affirmative action. And Nelson Mandela said, many people wonder why, Mr. Mandela, you are not angry. Why you have no antagonism, why you have no hostility. And he said, because I'm a man of hope. I'm a man of prayer. I'm a man who believes that if you try to believe the best in people, they can and will rise to the occasion. If anybody had a right to be bitter, to be angry, it was Nelson Mandela, and he is not. And finally, I am astounded, Mr. Coakley, that you believe in some sort of coordinated, organized conspiracy. I got news for you. White people ain't that smart. And to suggest that there's some sort of meeting every Friday downtown at the Federal Building, where all of the executives of television and all the newspaper editors and all of the magazine editors and all the executives in film studios all get together to figure out how to hold the black man down is paranoia, and it consigns a kind of powerfulness to whites that they do not have, and it consigns yourself a powerlessness, all out of proportion with reality. I have a friend who just graduated a few years ago from USC Film School. There were 30 other people who graduated. She just finished financing her film. I gave her some money to do it. And I said, of the grads in your class, the 30 grads, how many of them wanted to make a movie? She said, why, everybody. That's why we went to film school. We all wanted to make films. I said, how many have in fact made a film? She said, one. Me. Many of them were friends and relatives of people in Hollywood. Most of them were white. And the point is, it is a difficult, difficult process. And if you aren't willing, as I said earlier, to beg, to borrow, to steal, to sacrifice, to suffer, it's not going to happen. But it is a process for everybody. I belonged to a club in Cleveland a few years ago, and there was a black man who taught me how to shoot pool a lot better than I shot before. And one day during the Jesse Jackson campaign for president, he said, Larry, what do you think of the prospects for president for our Reverend Jesse Jackson? Now, I wasn't quite sure how to respond to that because he wasn't my candidate. And I said, you know, because of the way he said it, I knew he supported him. I didn't want to offend him. I wanted to maintain our friendship, and this wasn't about politics. And so I said, well, you know, I just don't think he's qualified. And he said, much to my surprise, Larry, neither do I. Reverend Jackson is in the we shall overcome business. And you know what? We done overcome. So, Mr. Coakley, I think the difference between the two of us is one of us thinks of himself as a victor, and one of us thinks of himself as a victim. I believe in the work ethic. I believe in making sure that we take back our schools, which are failing our children. I believe that we should call off the war on drugs, which is ensnaring many of our young black men behind bars for a useless war that is not working. I believe that the welfare state has created an epidemic of dependency and illegitimacy that Mr. Farrakhan has spoken out against. And I believe affirmative action says, I can't make it on my own. I need a boost. I'm inferior, something Minister Farrakhan also opposes. So I think ultimately one's success or failure in life is determined by one's own vision of oneself.
5 minutes.
And one's own sense of pride. Did anybody see that arts and entertainment special the other day on William Bojangles Robinson? Anybody see that? It's a man who was born 13 years after slavery, who learned how to dance by himself, danced for whites, was in minstrel shows. In those days, there was something called the two-colored rule. If you were performing before a predominantly white audience and you were black, there had to be at least 2 black performers on the stage at any given time. Why? The feeling was that a black performer wasn't sufficiently gifted to entertain whites by himself. Bojangles sought to break the two-colored rule, and he was successful in doing so. He then began wearing top hats and tails in his act, something that had never been done before, because he had a sense of pride. Hollywood called. Hollywood called him. Comes out to Hollywood and starts playing menial roles as waiters, as butlers, danced with Shirley Temple. He longed for a role where he could wear a tux and tails as he had done when he was doing vaudeville back in Harlem. Finally, when he was in his 60s, he earned such a role. Now, this is a Hollywood of Jim Crow, where they looked you in the eye and called you a nigger, yet he still maintained a sense of pride and a sense of dignity, and despite horrific obstacles which are substantially bigger than they are today, he still made it to the top, and at his peak was earning $6,000 a week. This is during the Depression. Probably that's about $60,000 a week in today's money. He still did it, and it can be done now. He died poor because he put on about 30,000 benefits for free. And when he died, he had the largest funeral New York had ever seen to this day. Over 1 million people. And finally, about a sense of pride and dignity, Bert Williams was also a great vaudevillian performer. Always dressed beautifully, wore a white starched shirt, bowler hat, walks into a tavern in Boston, turn of the century. Walks in, looks at the bartender and says, "Give me a shot of whiskey." Bartender looked at him and said, "That'll be $50. Bert Williams reached into his pocket, pulled out 3 crisp $100 bills, spread them on the counter, and said, "Give me 6. That's pride. Thank you very much.
Okay. We will now have 15 minutes of rebuttal by Brother Steve Coakley.
All right. Let's get it on. Well, on the question of conspiracy, there's a book out now by a man named Daniel Pipes. His brother Richard Pipes, I believe, was ambassador to Russia. Many of the whites in this country who have power and influence know the fact that they have gone through great lengths in this society in the last 18 months to repudiate the thought that a handful of white men have gone away together to rule the world. Earlier, though, you mentioned about the centralization of world power. You mentioned about those fewer companies. We know the big accountants have gone down. We know the banks have attrition and gone down. We know that this industry, these 7 companies have gone down. Well, are these companies going down just on the thought that they all want to consolidate? Is it the natural tendency of major corporations just to sell themselves to each other? Or is there a force that is compelling the world and all its countries to unify and consolidate under one flag, one nation? The reality is, Larry, that in this America, Rockefeller, on behalf of the chairman of the board of the American Establishment, and you should read the book, American Establishment by Leonard Silk and Mark Silk, 2 white men in the establishment, New York Times and Rockefeller Foundation, who studied the major industries and institutions, Harvard, CFR, Trilateral, etc., and concluded that yes, like Richard Rovery, there is an American establishment, and now as time has passed, a new group has risen up. The West Coast, the new establishment, the Geffens, the Spielbergs, the Eisners, the Malones at TCI, a new group of white men, the technological white men, Microsoft, have risen up and demanded their share in the colonialization of the world. And now we have a conflict between 2 groups of whites who are fighting for control of the world. And these whites have made clear and vanity fair that it's the discussion on the new establishment, the redefining of power in America, whether it was their second year, keeping secrets, Murdoch, Eisner, and other powers who will influence and build in the information age. Yes, you might not take it from me, but I could quote you some good white sources. And when I quote you those good white sources, you'll say, yes, yes, I see it now. If money and power ain't sweaters, then who would care what the pipers do? He who pays the piper? He who pays the piper? He who pays the piper. Oh, I know it. He who pays, I'm doing a revolution. Y'all doing crazy. Walt Disney. Now, Hollywood, that's the word Hollywood. It's German origins. Hole means hell. And Harley means cave. Cave hell. What's at the top of the mountain? Griffin Park. A lookout or a guardian animal. An animal that stands watches like a griffin or a gargoyle or a Grecian sphinx. They stand guard over things, but the one thing about a guardian animal is that they're subordinate to something higher than themselves. Which means that in essence they have no real power. What about these emerging group of whites? LA Times, August 20 of 95. They discussed this emerging new power. And they said the fate of the nation, Larry, hinges on the struggle of this new establishment. Like Disney. But it says one thing they don't have, Larry, is a political voice. And that's where you come in. How could they be struggling for dominating America if it ain't no struggle? The wired economy, the densely packed concentration of entrepreneurs and companies in America's urbanization states that generate virtually all the nation's globally competitive high-wage industries such as multimedia, design, software, entertainment, computers, biomedical, engineering, finance, and business services. The wired economy. The wired economy. The fate of the nation. All right? The question of, is there a conspiracy? Are there people sitting away together, conspiring to do something? Is there some sort of meeting? Yeah. In the new establishment story is a picture of the meeting, Larry. There they are. They meet in Wyoming, the new establishment. Do you see any black men in that picture, Larry? Here's the picture. This is Vanity Fair now. This is a good white source. Here is the picture of the white men who do meet in secret every year, Larry. Yes, these white men, the Allens, investment banking, the Levins, Time Warner, the Spielbergs, the Summer Redstones. Yes, Larry, they do meet. Only ignorance makes it not so. See, that's where Brother Coakley gets in trouble. I get in trouble because the manipulation of the American public, both white and black, is based on lack of information. And when lack of information don't work, then domination sets in. Now, you mentioned Jesse Jackson. You mentioned, who else you mentioned? Travis Smalley. We don't want none of them. They ain't none of ours. Jesse is just as full of assisting the left as you would assist the right. I can't distinguish between the two of you. Yes, and evidence suggests, Larry, that young black children are still picking the white doll over the black doll, and that is a historic fact. And yes, by the time they are teenagers, the youth have organized around their own values, rap music, the way they dress, the way they talk. They have compensated for the fact that their parents have become punks. Speaking of facts, one of the things I read about that you perpetrate is that in the last 30 years, black people have committed more hate crimes against whites. Something like that, correct? Last 30 years, blacks committed more hate crimes against whites? It's only one problem, and Irv know what the problem is. That hate crime statistics ain't been kept but 8 years. And the Anti-Defamation League did that, and I was right there in the house when Peter Rodino did it. Now, that's the fact. Now, whoa, 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 whoa. Shamir defends terror used to establish Israel. Shamir means hard as stone. Defended the fact that they had the right to kill whoever they wanted to make a nation. All I want is equality. Why do Jewish producers degrade blacks in Hollywood? Jews invented Hollywood around the turn of the century, and they still control it today. So says Jewish author Neil Gabler in his award-winning book entitled Empire of Their Own, How the Jews Invented Hollywood. On April 16, 1989, the calendar section of the Los Angeles Times carried an article entitled, quote, Hollywood Burning, Blacks and the Industry, the Smoldering Debate. Is it economics or racism? Written by Patrick Goldstein. The piece quotes producer Rob Cohen as follows, quote, we work in an industry. In tone, Hollywood is a white, male, college-educated Jewish menu full of ambitious guys who want to play out their fantasies in the largest possible form. Yeah, I saw Amistad. I saw Larry in Amistad. I saw Larry in Amistad. Hold it now. You saw him. He was the brother that pulled the brother through the bushes and pushed him on the boat. Oh, listen up, listen up, listen up, listen up. Larry, this Weekend Sentinel has a really good article. You should read it and called Black Filmmakers, Actors, and Oscar Blackout Again. And in fact, I hear you even had the brother on your show who got the suit against Hollywood. You had him on your show, didn't you? Because I met one of his friends today who came by the hotel to make me understand the fact that these men have gotten together to say that they have a legitimate allegation against Hollywood. And you, in fact, even had them on. And I don't think you said they were wrong. I don't think you put them down. This is this dual Larry thing we got to deal with. We got to deal with this pathological Larry. He's here and he's there and he's everywhere. But I know somewhere deep down inside, you too want to fight back, and that will increase. In fact, the tape is on the way, but I do have the documents. No, I have the documents. I have the documents. I have the documents.
5 minutes.
Listen up, listen up, listen up, listen up, listen up. This is in this Weekend Sentinel by John Horn. When it comes to honoring black actors, Academy Award voters have a perfect record. Perfectly awful. The black shutout of top Oscars is indicative of a deeper Hollywood problem. The film business is run by whites, and creative decisions reflect that homogeneity. The Academy, whose membership is estimated to be 95% white, only mirrors the industry's narrow makeup and its equally narrow viewpoint, critics say. The only black note during the Oscars is the fact that Spike Lee's documentary was nominated. Says the absence of minority representation in the Oscars is really about the absence of any concerted, sustained representation of minorities on the screen, says Todd Boyd, a professor in critical studies in the film school at the University of Southern California. Who is in control? Many don't know. This is a Washington Post story. Suggests that when a person doesn't know who is in control, their behavior becomes somewhat irrelevant when they don't understand the power alliance. Who is in control? Many do not know or care. The suggestion is that if someone can keep you from understanding the center of power, that how you act will reflect that distortion of reality. And brother, I'm paid well to compensate for what stronger men can't say. And in closing, at Time Warner, where they were going to have Black History Month, the question could be simply put, do blacks have the right to have their own Black History Month? Or can black people pick who speak at the Jewish temple? Listen to me now. See, at Time Warner, when the music record executives decided that they wanted Steve Coakley, and the ADL took out an editorial in Murdoch's paper, and they sent a letter to Gerald Levin and said, how dare you allow your blacks to have Coakley for Black History Month? Listen, don't show you right. Shemitism, we write Irv, Shemitism. Now, that's right. Okay, listen up. Listen up now. Listen up. Listen up. Come on. We got him. We got him. Listen up. Listen up. Listen up. So when Gerald Levin said, you know, we better clamp down and cut Coakley off and not allow him to speak, they went to Sylvia Rhone, who is the top black woman in the music business. She makes over $3 million a year. And they told Sylvia Rhone, Dick Parsons, who is the top black in media, Dick Parsons is the president of Time Warner. He is the top black executive in the media, and I personally know that Dick Parsons is a punk. I know that Dick Parsons as a man didn't have the character to stand up and question the right of a white man to know what a black man is doing for other black people. When it came time to tell, well, how will we tell the public that Coakley cannot speak? Dick Parsons wrote this memo to Sylvia Rhone. If they ask you who said that Coakley cannot speak, you tell them you did. But the point, and the memo is dated January 31st, 1996, to Sylvia Rhone from Dick Parsons on the question of Our Roots Run Deep, which is the name of the lecture series for Black History Month of Time Warner record executives, which are housed in Rockefeller Center. It says, oh, sure, you're right, sister. The question is, how can you make a black woman say she made a decision that she didn't make? When a black man is saying, okay, if y'all do it that way, we'll go to the street on you.
1 minute.
We'll go to the street on you. So that's when you begin to go find other people to say they done it. Mandela, only reason he got out of jail, Larry, because he agreed not to nationalize the diamond and the gold mines. And poor Winnie Mandela, who had to watch this sick, pathological nigger give up his woman to the white man. After waiting for him 27 years, the sister got ostracized because the white man could not have a black woman who helped bring on the revolution that got him out of jail, stand in leadership. Last thing. Oh, no, last thing. Mike Tyson bit the boy 2 times. Mark Alfred bit him 40 times a sitting. Maybe you can find some difference in how they treated the two. When this thing is over, and I'm going to be in the back at the table where my stuff are, where the anti-white lecture material is located.
Okay, Steve ran over 25 seconds, Larry. You all right with that? All right. Okay. If you want to say something, we give you 25 seconds. Because you do have 30 minutes in the Q&A. And we'll give you commercial time, too, since Steve took his. All right, brother. All right, brothers and sisters. How you enjoying yourself thus far? Now, we're going to call Brother Malik up to make a couple announcements. You know, he got to do this because Brother got sponsors, too. Plus, he has a lecture series that he wants to inform the community about. So, brothers and sisters, please be quiet. After this round, we will engage in the Q&A, which is the question and answer. So I'm sure all the brothers and sisters with legitimate questions, as well as the brothers and sisters who are plants, will line up at the mic. See, they lining up already. Now, let me say this before we bring Brother Malik up. You know, because the black community is famous for this. When you get a chance to ask your question, just ask your question. Don't give us a lecture before you ask the question. Okay? Let's assume everybody in here is an informed brother and sister, and we're going to ask the question. Direct your question to a person, and that person will respond. If you want both people to respond, then both
debatants will respond, and we will give them 1 minute to respond. Now I bring up Brother Malik Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum again. I hope y'all know y'all getting fed, right? Well, listen, I want to personally thank Brother Steve Coakley for accepting the invitation. I also want to personally thank Larry Elders for accepting it, for making this event possible. You know, the other day, Mr. Elders was on the radio on Friday, and he was talking about the president not coming to Los Angeles to do an event on race, a town hall meeting on race. But we don't need President Clinton, do we? We're talking about it right now. So we want to thank these two for talking about a serious issue here. Give them a round of applause. I want you to know that the tape is being high-speed duplicated, so it'll be available right after the Q&A. I also want you to know that Dr. Earl Hutchinson is signing his great book, The Assassination of the Black Male Image, that ties in the program right after the event. Dr. Furpo Carr, who spoke about his book, he's also going to be out there doing a book signing on Wicked Words, Poison Mind. And I want you to patronize the vendors out there because economics is an important issue. You know, Larry, that was his argument, right? Economics. So we want to patronize one another. We want to do something for ourselves. We also have the Mooney Twins here, and I want you to go by their booth because they have a networking program. And so I want you to keep that on your record books. Reverend Elder Colin Eckridge. He's been affiliated with West Angeles for about 9 years. Used to be part of his Bible study college. He's no longer there, but that's where he spent that 9 years. So they're going the day before Easter, we're going to be right here on the third great debate. Oh, next Saturday, March 7th, Brother Steve is going to continue his series of lectures here in Los Angeles at Faith Methodist United Church on 108th and Western. The doors open at 5 o'clock. He came with a lot of information. He's unable to get to that, but there he's going to have plenty of time to teach y'all about some of this inner workings and behind-the-scenes information. So March 7th at Faith Methodist United Church, next Saturday. Doors open at 5 o'clock, and that's at Faith Methodist on 108th and Western. There you go. This is tell it like it is. 1713 West 108th. 1713 West 108th Street. At 5 o'clock. 5 o'clock. Also, I'm going to be scheduling Dr. Africa at Faith Methodist on March 21st. He's going to be doing a similar. Dr. Africa wrote African Holistic Health. Well, he's going to be back in L.A. and he's going to be talking about women and health. So he's going to do a series on women and health and disease. So you might want to come out to that March 21st at also Faith Methodist United Church. And then that's the doors should open in the evening at 5 as well. Let's see. The video of this event will be available at Malik's Bookstore, okay, in the Baldwin Hills Mall, and also Malik's Bookstore and Fish and Grill on Crenshaw King next to M&M's. Well, thank you. I love you, too. At this point, I'd like to turn it back over to the moderator.
Thank you, Brother Malik. Okay. We're getting ready to open it up. All right. So we're gonna start here and we're gonna alternate. Now if I hear you guys going to a lecture, I'm gonna cut you off, okay? I'm just warning you. Don't get sensitive. It ain't personal. All right. All right, let's start right here.
Good afternoon. This question is directed to Brother Elder, right here. You theorize that basically everything that we're going through is based on economics or race. Now, my question is this. How can you refute that a lot of the decisions that are being made are not based on economics? They're not sound, as a matter of fact, but they're based on race. Now, I'll give you an example. The mortgage industry. Many major mortgage companies are being sued left and right because they are systematically discriminating against blacks, Latinos, and women. And it doesn't seem like it would be sound for them to do something like that, but it is true. There are mounds of evidence to show that fact.
Okay. I like to see your mounds of evidence because I have mounds of evidence that say just the opposite. Look. If you look at the rejection rate of black applicants at black banks, black-owned banks around the country, the rejection rates are no different than they are at white-owned banks. Also, the acceptance rate for Asians is higher than the acceptance rate for whites. So what you're really saying is white bankers are so stupid that they're willing to turn away profits and they're willing to depress their own people and advance Asians. The data just doesn't support that. I know that's how you feel, and if you have information, I'd love to see it, and I have information, and I think you won't be able to refute the information that I have. The fact of the matter is, the same reason that Burger King does not turn away black people is the same reason that a bank will not turn away a credit-worthy black person. You show that you have collateral, you show you have a credit history, you show your ability to repay the money, you'll get the loan.
No.
And if you don't get the loan, that person's going to get fired.
Okay, well, he did direct his question at Brother Elder, but maybe when they ask you a question, you can jump back in on.
No, I think I ought to be able to rebut that because the question of facts were brought up, and I got the fact in my hand. He said, show him the fact. Here's the USA Today, Monday, February 23rd, Nationline, urban mortgages. Bias against city residents by mortgage lenders has pushed urban homecoming rates far below the suburbs. The U.S. Conference of Mayors said in a report it released today, among the findings, the rejection rate for black and Hispanic buyers with incomes between 100 and 120% of their neighborhood median income is twice the rejection rate of that of whites. The result that 49% of urban residents own their own home compared to 71% of suburbanites. The mayors called on private mortgage industry to work with federal officials to ensure that anyone who is willing and able to buy a home can do so. That is the fact, Larry.
Okay, before we take the next question, hold on.
He don't have none.
Hold on. Brother Steve just changed the format, so what we're going to do is wherever the question is directed, the respondent will respond, and if there is a rebuttal, then the rebuttal will be allowed. Because we owe Larry one now. Okay. All right, now we'll go this way. Is the mic not on? Okay, brother, why don't you go to this mic real quick? While they're going to have to fix that one anyway, Steve. So yeah, but if the question is to you, if the question is to you, brother,
I'm ready. Give me some credit.
Is the mic on?
Testing 1 2 testing.
Okay, all right.
This question is to Mr. Elder. Mr. Elder, perhaps Vietnam was a war you might have been patriotic enough to participate in. But if you know anything about the statistics of black death in that war, it was disproportionate. And with that in mind, Mr. Elder, how can you say America love it or leave it? Black people have spent their blood, not only through slavery, but also in every war in this country. And for you to use a right-wing, right-wing expression, if I don't see streams of black people leaving this country, it's kind of odd. How do you justify suggesting, connoting, that black people should leave this country? It's their country, our country. We built it. How do you rationalize such a comment? You should apologize for saying it. Mr. Coakley, I would hope you respond to this question also.
Well, you start out by saying that the death rate for blacks in Vietnam is disproportionate to the population of blacks. It's simply not true. The studies just don't show that. And I'm happy to show you the studies, sir. So you're just wrong. Blacks have participated in every single war, including the Revolutionary War, including the Civil War, every single war in this country. We have, you're right, quite right, helped to build this country. Precisely why we should try to make it as strong as possible, to make it as good as possible, make it as progressive as possible. And so I don't know what you're telling me, sir. I don't understand what your point is.
Why do you suggest black people
wait, that's a question.
Since he even asked me, he said, why don't I leave?
May I finish? That remark was directed towards Mr. Coakley.
Yeah, why don't I leave? That's what he said.
He seemed so pessimistic about the future of the country, and I simply suggested that perhaps there might be somewhere else where he'd feel a little more comfortable.
his answer suggests mutual possession between him and the whites. Like, why don't you go someplace else where we are, where we ain't? But, not to prioritize that. In actuality, Larry, in your so-called America, people have the right to complain. And my right to complain and your right to viewpoints and all of these others, whether you like them or not, why would you answer in such a rejection way if dissent and raising these questions are what you allege this is all about? But it is those same people who disagreed with something who stole this country in the name of that disagreement. And part of the reason why I'm here is that the ancestors blessed me with the capability to catalytically convert the forces so that we can reclaim that which was stolen.
Okay, sister, ask your question.
Yes, this question is directed at Mr. Elder. You stated about an article in which they were showing a correlation and comparison between the black boys and the white boys and their self-esteem.
Right.
I'm very familiar with that article. So my question is, were you aware that the reliability and the validity and the sample size of that particular article was so small that it was considered statistically insignificant, and that 96% of the research, the preponderance of the research, supports the idea that black males, boys' self-esteem is at the lowest ever, and that a primarily white association, the American Association of Psychologists, all their research that they've done in the last 10 years does not support the argument you just made. So I'm wondering, how do you justify using that particular article to support your argument?
Well, first of all, it's not the only article that I have to support my position, and I'm happy to see the information that you have. All I know is that black boys are testing very high in tests on self-esteem. They're testing higher than our white boys. Besides, once again, the relevance of this is what? We are trying to build a community where when people graduate from high school, they graduate at a level commensurate with what you'd expect of somebody in 12th grade. Whether they can read, whether they can write, whether they can compute, where you would expect a 12th grader. And that's what the issue here is. And we are not teaching our kids, not just black kids, but also Hispanic kids, and anybody who gets an education in the inner city. We're not teaching our kids how to read, how to write, and how to compute at a level where they should be. That should be the issue.
1 second rebuttal is simply this. I came all the way from Silver Spring, Maryland. It took me 3.5 days to get here by train. I spent $130 on U.S. Express Mail to mail my facts to the debate. Why come to a debate without the evidence that supports your position? I paid for my right to share my knowledge, and each and every one of you know wherever I go, I never want you to believe what I say. I leave the footprints from what I say, and that's the way we operate.
This is a two-part question. First to Brother Coakley. Is there a connection between Rupert Murdoch of Fox Television and the Rothschild family? And to Larry Elder, is there a connection between your beliefs and the house and white woman you have waiting for you in the hills? Well, Steve, you can answer yours first, or...
You asked me about my white women on the hill? Oh, listen up.
The question was, is there a connection between
Murdoch and Rothschild?
Yeah, and Rothschild.
Is there a connection between Rupert Murdoch and Rothschild? Interestingly enough, in South Africa, there was a white man of the Jewish religion named Bernie Bernardo, who, when the rich whites decided he wasn't operating in a certain sort of professional way, all of a sudden his boat to England, he went overboard. The way Rupert Murdoch got his dynasty in America is that another white man of the Jewish religion, Robert Maxwell, who was deep in debt and mystery, went overboard on his way to somewhere, and Murdoch gathered up his assets. Murdoch has unlimited finance. He bought the Dodgers, didn't he? He bought football off of NBC or whatever. Murdoch has more money than he has assets. Murdoch's unlimited financing come from his relationship with De Beers Diamond Mines of Australia, his predominant financier. That's the connection.
Okay, Larry, your question.
Well, I appreciate that you're so concerned about my personal life. I happen to be single, but if I did have a white woman waiting for me in my house in the hills, I suppose you'd be more satisfied if I murdered her and then blamed it on the white man.
Yeah! 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 All right. Hold on now. I think the consensus on the stage was that was a good answer. All right. Okay, brother, your question.
Ashanti, brother Coakley, for once again kicking game. Mr. Elders,
My name is Elder, no S.
whatever. The Olmec civilization civilized America.
Hold on.
Just kick game.
Let's try not to be vicious.
I'm not. This is the way I speak.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. What is it about me or what is it about you that hate? Why do you hate yourself? I mean, all these statistics that you quote, those are European institutions. And all these Negroes you talk about, Diana Ross and Sidney Poitier, they sleeping with the enemy. So, I mean, and then you bring Irv Rubin. This is the individual that spied on every single African organization in the United States, sold those documents to South Africa. So how do you have audacity to sit up here and support white America? You should be happy that you're walking out here live. Because there are brothers that are tired of people selling out. And you better watch your back.
Do you respond?
I have a question for you, sir. Sir?
Brothers and sisters.
Sir, I have a question for you. If you are so unhappy with what I've said, perhaps you should ask for your $15 back. Because you misinvested your money.
Let's say this. Hold on. We've had
Wait a second.
We've had a very engaging discussion tonight. I think we need to say this. Both Brother Steve Coakley and Brother Larry Elder, lives are threatened very frequently for their opinion.
That's right.
Okay? And for them to come here and talk about them, we should not engage in that kind of discussion. Now, we all have the right to disagree with somebody, and certainly we all have the right to recognize the danger of our discussion of what we say. But there's no reason for us as family to put that out there. Okay? So if you feel that way, keep it to yourself. Okay? Because we want people who have opposing views different from us to not feel that they can't come in our community and talk about it. Brother, did you finish your point?
I finished.
Okay. All right. We'll go to the next question, sister.
Steve Coakley and Larry Elder. I'm Molly Bell, straight out of Compton.
Hey, Molly, how you doing?
All right. And Larry has, you talked about my city real bad, but you're also a part of the Compton Family Tennis Club, and you've helped a lot of young people. For that, I'm not ashamed, and I say thank you. Now, my question is, have you read anything by Dr. Francis Cress Welsing or Neely Fuller, where they talk to us that there are three kinds of people in the world: people of color, people of non-color, and white supremacists? Now, we know that the white supremacists are the ones who are making the youth answer that you said. The youth said that they are not racist. There's no racism, and they're not fighting racism. Youth are not applying for jobs. Youth are not buying homes. Youth are not getting cars. Youth are not getting loans. So they don't feel that racism. And you, as a keeper, and I believe that you are a gatekeeper, as Steve Coakley, I don't know if you're familiar with any of his works, and I suggest, as you so eloquently said to us, I suggest you read some of that. You as a gatekeeper, do you believe that once we see that you are a gatekeeper and you're not, the white people are not happy with your gatekeeping, will you self-destruct and leave it alone? That's what's supposed to happen with the riddle of the Sphinx. I'll listen to your comment. I've got to say this while I'm here. I know that from my heart to my God I say, the struggle continues, but always to God be the glory.
Your question is whether these polls can be trusted, since teenagers don't have responsibilities that would cause them to encounter racism. Let me respond this way. These polls have been taken for a long time. Black teens have been asked this question for a long time. And 20 or 30 years ago, the answers were very different. Today's teens feel that racism plays little or no role in their lives. Teens who were asked the same question 20 or 30 years ago answered very differently.
Well, I know that all the youth I know are going to be in New York. All the youth I know are going to be in New York on September 5th, 1998 for the 5 Million Youth March. I know it's free, Baba. The women done spoke, the men done spoke, and now it's time for the youth to stand up, who are the primary target of the New World Order, are the young black male. Now it's their time to come forth and show that they are unified and united. And Neely Fuller said one thing we should never forget. If you don't understand white supremacy, everything else you understand won't make no sense at all.
All right. Let me say this. In the interest of time, the Q&A session is 30 minutes. We have about another 15 minutes on that. I couldn't sit the community mother down. You know, she had to do what she had to do. But we're going to ask everybody else just to ask a question. Okay? All right.
Okay, I have a quick two-part question. Why was Bill Cosby turned down and trying to purchase the studio? And also, I'm a member of Local 44. There's 4,500 in our local. There's only 30 black, and out of the 30 black, maybe 10 are working all the time. This is in the studio. 10 are working all the time. And Herb Rubin was saying something about Amistad. There were no blacks in the production part of it other than her. We went to her and said we were going to protest. She said, wait a minute, don't do that, don't do that. They hired one black prop maker and one black laborer. The prop maker stayed 2 weeks, the laborer stayed 3 months. I put my name on that list for 2 weeks. I'm a prop maker, trying to get on that show. There's no racism in Hollywood. I must be tripping.
Sir, please. Sir, can you come back for a second? Can you come back for a second? How did you get in the union in the first place?
A brother brought me in.
What made you qualified to join the union? That's what I'm asking.
Because I'm a crafts person.
Why haven't
I'm
others?
a painter and a sculptor.
Why haven't others done the same thing you've done?
Because it's so hard. You wouldn't believe it.
Right.
You wouldn't believe. I can tell you some stories that you don't even want to hear.
Well,
I mean, we appreciate.
I'm talking about just trying to get in. I'm not even talking about trying to get a job. I'm talking about just trying to get in.
Right. Larry, you want to respond?
Yeah. As far as Bill Cosby is concerned, why was he turned down? There's no obligation when you're selling something to sell it. Bill Cosby wanted to make a purchase. The seller didn't want to sell it. That's life.
Okay, I'll accept that. I'll accept that.
I would
okay,
just,
now address my issue in reference to why is only 10 that's working all the time out of 30 out of an 4,500 local.
There are unions that have very few blacks. There are unions that have more blacks.
Unions, you don't get no job through the union hall.
Let him respond.
But literally, he must understand this. The hall don't call you and say, we have a show for you to get on. The production coordinator hires the construction coordinator. The construction coordinator hires his people. Good old boys hire good old boys.
And I don't disagree with what you said. I've talked to a number of people who are in the craft union in the motion picture industry, and it's difficult to get in. And people have to do what Paul Williams, the great black architect, did. He designed the theme building at the airport, and you have to be willing to come in early, stay late, work for nothing if necessary, get the experience.
All right. Appreciate your position.
Okay.
All right, sister, come on.
Okay, moderator, I'll try to speak as fast as I can so I can get everything in. In answer to your question, Mr. Elders, the reason why I'm still here is because I'm trying to build up enough resources so I can go back home. But if you have any of your friends that want to sponsor my trip home, I will leave right away. And will not come back. While I'm here, might as well do some damage while I'm here. And, my question is, how do you account for the people, the few people that did make it to Hollywood that are of African descent, and how they got there through doing buffoonery work that is degrading our community today?
Once again, the kinds of stuff that you call buffoonery are unfortunately supported by a lot of people, including a lot of black consumers. So your complaint is not against Larry Elder. Your complaint is against the taste of some of the people who are watching some of these idiotic sitcoms. That should be where you direct your energy. Hollywood has had a long history of having black people involved. Oscar Micheaux was a great black director who was able to raise money for film, produce films, and distribute films in an era where it was very, very difficult. I, once again, will tell you that this is a tough industry. A lot of people come here. A lot of people want to get into the film industry. When I came out here a few years ago, back from having been away, I went to an after meeting, a union meeting, and I was told by the organizer that 95% of the people who come here will never earn a living more than $50,000 a year. White, black, indifferent. It's a rough, tough field. It's a glamorous field, and a lot of people want to come here, and a lot of people are going to fail. If you're not prepared for that, you shouldn't be here.
About Hollywood, let's have my cousin had a play at the Aquarius Theater named Julius Johnson. It bread, beans, and things. He had the play at the Aquarius Theater, and on the first night we opened up, Larry, the mafia showed up and tried to shut us down. The mafia. Hey, is there a mafia in Hollywood? Is there a mafia in New York? Is there a mafia in Chicago and Kansas City? Well then, how do we factor the mafia in equal employment opportunity? Because the mafia dominates certain industries in Hollywood, and most of those who know they're there pathologically act like they don't see them. The mafia is not an equal opportunity employer. The mafia has traditionally ostracized especially black men in crafts who are threats to those sick, weak, degenerate whites' inferiority complex.
All right, brother, come on.
All right, how y'all doing today? I'd like to bring to the attention, in this part of my question, image coverage by a local author, Dr. Arthur Graham. He deals with subliminal racism in the Academy Awards and other movie reviews that he does. One of the things that he taught me, which is not necessarily in this book, but I had the experience of spending some time with the brother, is he said that everything that is in the frame is in there for a certain reason, okay? What I want to bring to your attention is, this is Vanity Fair, the 65 leaders who shape and rule the world today. All right? Yeah. Good white sources. There you go. That's right. The ones that black folks believe, right? White sources. Now, this is Michael Eisner. I'd like to exhibit this because this is really question
what is
right
your
here.
question?
The question is, can you see the racism in this picture? And I just want them to take a quick look at it. I won't even talk anymore, okay? Please take a good look at the picture. There's two people.
This on the right side?
Oh, wow. Can you see it? Okay. What is it, Steve? What is it, Larry? And take a look at it. Tell me what you see.
Your point is what, sir?
In the picture, there's a black man, and they made him look like the devil. And I'm willing to stand out here and let everybody in here take a look at this picture.
So you think the photographer said, hey, let me make a black guy and put him in the back so he looks like a devil in front of
As the brother taught me, everything is in the frame for a reason, okay? If you take a look at it, as you did...
You apparently feel white people are smarter and more powerful than I think they are.
No, I don't acquiesce any of that to white folks.
Sounds to me like
you made your point.
Anybody that wants to take a look at it can take a look at it.
Brothers and sisters, let me make this announcement, and you have to understand this is a contractual obligation. When we we discussed what the rules would be, we said the Q&A would be 30 minutes. We have 5 minutes left. 5 minutes left. Hold on. Ask your question, get your response, and move on. Okay, don't try to argue your position with the debate. Just ask your question. Even if they don't give you the answer you want, his response is his response. Okay? Come on with it.
All right, Larry, since you started off, you felt the need to brag about all the business you found for white attorneys. If you ever want to get some business to black attorneys, just call 1-800-UNITE-US. Okay, now for my question. Channel 13 News just did an expose showing how white corporations are spending millions of dollars exporting black racial stereotypes in their commercials, showing blacks as cannibals, as whites dressed up in blackface acting like apes. Okay, so I'd like you to comment on that. And also, in your statement, you said the news isn't really racist. They're just giving America what they want. Well, a white Jewish person, he said recently that the reason why Jews promoted black stereotypes over so many years is because that's what America wanted. So I'd like you to comment.
Well, as to your first comment about the commercial, I don't know what you're talking about. You have to tell me.
Well, I have a tape, and I think I'll make sure you see it.
I'm not disputing your facts. I'm just saying, assuming that's true, it's horrible. As I said when I first started, I never said that there was no racism, and I also said that 10% of the American people believe Elvis is still alive. There are going to be boneheads in every field. What do you want me to say? Look at all the commercials on television, and how many of them have those kinds of images that you just described. I've just described to you the numbers of minorities who are in commercials, so clearly what you are describing is an aberration and does not reflect how most commercials are.
Okay. Your question, sister. Come on.
Larry, how you doing?
Good. How about you?
I'm good. Okay. I just want to ask this question regarding Hollywood, perceived racism in the media. The one thing that you did expound on is you're concerned about our youth. This is one thing I would like to ask you. In any types of radio broadcasts that you have, if we are all concerned about the youth, what we want to see in today's media is really black intellectuals, more black intellectuals, so that there are role models that they can see and emulate. This is what we need. I would like you to speak more about and let our youth know about more black intellectuals, like Mr. Coakley, like Dr. Germani, like Claude Anderson, who speak about black economics. Give them hope to aspire to be like these people are, including yourself. Thank you, dear.
Thank you. Well,
see, the black woman sure know how to slip her stuff in and get on. She didn't even ask a question. Go ahead.
My name is Anne Marie Johnson. I am an actress. And Mr. Elder, I also sit as a board member of the Screen Actors Guild, generating the majority of the votes this year. I will sit for 3 years. Hollywood is filled with racism, and my question to you is, and I'm a living testament of that, My question for you is, how can a film, and I'm not even going to give you the title, but it opened up last night, starring Richard Dreyfuss and Jenna Elfman, get a green light when it's done in blackface? You tell me Hollywood isn't racism. If Spike Lee did a film about Jews and gave them horns and a tail and a yarmulke, do you think he would get a green light?
Hold on, let's see what he got to say.
Denzel Washington.
Let's hear his response, brothers and sisters.
Denzel Washington, Morgan Freeman, Lawrence Fishburne, Danny Glover, Samuel L. Jackson, Harry Belafonte, Angela Bassett, Cuba Gooding, Alfre Woodard, Eddie Murphy, Robin Givens, James Earl Jones, Blair Underwood, John Amos, Andre Brower, Ron Harris, Whitney Houston, Vivica Fox, James Earl Jones, Della Reese, Ernie Hudson, Vivica Fox, Martin Lawrence, Chris Rock, Will Smith, Halle Berry, Dan Glover, Forrest Whitaker, Paul Winfield, Vanessa Williams, Wesley Snipes, Damon Wayans and his brothers, Charles Dutton, Robert Hooks, Mario Van Peebles, Sidney Poitier, Harry Belafonte, Don Cheadle, Kadeem Hardison, Oprah Winfrey, Ruby Dean, Ossie Davis, Gregory Hines, Ice-T, Ice Cube, Tupac Shakur, Janet Jackson.
You naming dead people.
Tommy Davidson, Lynn Winfield, Spike Lee, James McDaniel, Richard Roundtree, Eric LaSalle, Richard Pryor, Bill Cosby, Robert Townsend, Brandy.
Okay.
Larry, it's apparent that they don't count. That doesn't count, Larry.
It sounds to me like your career's not going that well.
Hold on. Brother Steve, you want to rebut?
You know what?
There was no question. How a particular film.
There was a question.
How a particular film gets green-lighted for all sorts of reasons, many of which I've already talked about. If your point is that executives have taste and judgment different from yours, there's no argument here. But their goal is to make money. Now they can be foolish, they can be stupid. Many.
Okay, Steve, rebut, and then we're going to take two more questions. Steve, rebut, two more questions.
Listen up. Listen up. Listen up. Oh!
Hold on a second. The fact that we started late did not necessarily change the format. The format is consistent with what we agreed to in advance. Whether we start, no. Okay,
we made this possible.
We're not going to even go there, brother. We're not going to even go there. The contractual obligation.
Okay, let's go.
Hold on.
Hey, listen up, Africans.
We paid the money.
Well, let's get on with the show then. Let's go. Money green, big money green. That's all. Listen up.
We're not going to disagree that you paid the money. The program was formatted, and the program will run to its full conclusion. Now, if the debatants want to stay beyond that, that's their option if they want to leave beyond that. What we're trying to do is hold and get as many questions in as possible, yet fulfill their obligation. If they have to leave, they have to leave. So y'all going all sideways and all of that is not going to benefit everybody here.
Okay, next question.
We will take two more questions, and then the program will wrap.
Listen up. Especially in this industry where the width of it is extremely narrow. I appreciate the sister exercising the courage to speak against an industry that has historically sought to punish people who have been labeled as uncooperative and other failings suggested that they will not work because they do not act in a way that whites deem secure for their weak personalities. And I appreciate the sister's courage. On the concept of fact, here again, Larry, I think it would be very important in any other, I know on the radio you have the capability to talk people off of the air with that little button, and you don't really have to respond thoroughly to their questions. The sister statement represents a huge possibility of securing factual evidence. The brother who was the union man represents an important moment for securing factual evidence. There is a finite answer to these questions we're raising, and emotionally we cannot solve them in trying to assure ourselves that we have made white people comfortable on our night with blacks. So at some point we need to factually compile the statement. While I'm here, I'll be on the front page Tuesday. We're going to develop a formula before I leave here to make this emotional conclusion about Hollywood factual. And at that point, he has nowhere else to go with his statements or be considered a sucker perpetrator.
All right.
Your question, brother.
Okay, my question is for both keynote speakers. Primarily, Steve Coakley. Steve Coakley, I took the time out to read about the Greek history along with the Romans. And I discovered that in the Greeks, as well as the Romans, they took the lower class people and gave them entertainment to lure them away from what's really going on in society. Now, when you look at that, look at today. You see a lot of black males in the entertainment industry. Hold on a second. My question is this. If you take look at history from 60s, the 70s, and the 80s, you will see that 1 of million black men in an entertainment industry is picked to be the lead actor. Why is that?
If your question is directed towards me, I just read you off a whole list of people who are quite successful in the field. And I just talked to you about how many blacks were members of the Screen Actors Guild. So I don't know what else you want me to say.
Go ahead, brother.
All right, brother. Brother Elder, since we're here to talk about racism in Hollywood, let's talk about the 70s and your Superflies and your Shafts and your black exploitation movies. Let's talk about the 80s and your Menace to Society, your Colors, and so on and so forth. Let's fast forward to the 90s and let's talk about most recently Caught Up. Explain to me how you as a black man cannot feel that this, in addition to the news, is not racism in Hollywood. And Brother Coakley, you can talk about anything you want to our list.
Once again, the business is driven by what people perceive consumers to want. And if these movies are distasteful to you, don't go. If you don't go, they won't make them.
Thank you.
One more question here?
Speaking of taste, and we'll come right to you, brother. And I believe we're close to over. That
was the last question.
That was the last question?
One more. That was the last question.
Well, listen up. The brother has said that this is the last question. I'm going to move myself and my operation to the back of that hallway there where those things that represent things people like are available. I appreciate Larry, as a black man, having the opportunity to speak to you. One thing before this program started was I was going to feel very uncomfortable if the white media was here, because even though people disagree with your viewpoints, I would never want to speak against you in front of the white media, such that the impression would be fair. I would never want that to happen. I would never have wanted that to happen, and I'm glad that they weren't here, because we would have had a difficult time in the public dealing with the principles of black law for black people. And even though you may sometimes repudiate those things that we consider very black, as a matter of fact, you still are. And all of us, listen up now, And for those of you who use the Bible from Saul to Paul, everybody is capable of turning around themselves. Sometimes it's enhanced by pressure. So, brother, I wish you the best of luck. I listened to your listen up now. I listened to the program. I listened to your program this week. Those people in those talking drums and other organizations that have risked their life protesting what they believe your values are, went out and protested against those people who were at Disney advertising. I thought that was very fair. They choose not to talk to you. I chose to come here even against their wishes to see if we could talk about that upper crust of the media, none of which you're responsible for, which you are reflecting on, none of which you own. And again, when I opened, I said, you are a victim. And the evidence of all these years of white supremacy are reflective in your viewpoints.
Right.
Brother, one day may come. One day may come, and you may have something you may really need to tell. We're still open and available for you to relay those things to us. Just like in slavery, after a time, even some overseers had to assist the Underground Railroad that went from Alabama to Canada. So that option always remains open to you as a black man, no matter what you say. And I still suggest to whites that you tricked them today by getting all these people to come in here, Brother Coakley. I thank you, man. I really thank you. I really.
Brother Steve, Brother Larry, you want a closing comment? Closing comment.
Well, Mr. Coakley, I appreciate that comment. And one day I hope that you understand that despite slavery, despite Jim Crow, despite this country's legacy of racism, blacks, when they came out of slavery, couldn't read. Within several decades, most blacks were literate. Progress has been made well before affirmative action, well before civil rights protests. Progress continues to be made, and it is easy, as Aristotle once put it, to be angry. The brother over here just quoted the Greeks. Now, when I do it, we moan. Anybody can be angry, but to be angry for the right reason, for the right purpose, in the right way, that is difficult. Thank you very much for having me.
Brothers and sisters, let's give both of our debaters a standing ovation.
Larry, you number one.
The tapes are being high-speed duplicated in the back, and they will be available for sale. Let's thank Brother Malik for putting on this forum, too.
Brother Malik!